we look at the bottom 6 of the Premier League now, and we look at the fixtures that are left. As we record now, Spurs' next Premier League game after they played Atletico Madrid is Nottingham Forest at home. Now, Spurs' record at home is 11 points in a calendar year, which is absolutely shocking. Do you see anything in the Liverpool game or even the Madrid game that you can take to think, if we beat Forest on Sunday, we stay up?
Yeah, I think the point yesterday could be absolutely pivotal for our season. It just gives you that belief. It gives you that momentum going into the game. Obviously, it's a shame we've got the Atletico game in the middle now.
Yeah.
Because that becomes a problem now. What do we do there? Do we rotate? Do we go full strength? So that becomes a problem. But it's definitely a game we can win at home. But the Forest game for myself, it's the biggest game of our season. It's a 6-pointer. And I think whoever can win that game, I think, is going to take a giant step to staying in the Premier League. It's absolutely just so disheartening to see a team and a club and a stature of our Tottenham Hotspur in the bottom fighting for our lives. It only hit me for real when we lost to Crystal Palace. I never, ever believed we'd get relegated or even close to being relegated until the Crystal Palace game. And I went home after that game very, upset, and it was a struggle for a few days to kind of get over it, and pick yourself up to go again.
Do you blame Van der Ven for losing that game? Because it was 1-0 when he got sent off, and Palace had we talked about it on another episode, Palace had a goal chalked off because someone's nose was offside. We'll leave that to one side. Then Solanke went up the other end and banged one in. And then obviously everything was going fine, and then Van der Ven did that. So, yeah, is it Van der Ven's fault? Yeah,
I think it's on him. I think as a captain on the day as well, I think you've got to take responsibility for yourself. For me personally, if a guy's through on goal and he's in the box, I think if you're fouling him, if it's in the 88th minute, 89th minute and we're 1-0 up and you pull him back, I can completely accept it. I'll be like, look, you took a gamble, you're hoping that we can cling on for 3 points, the keeper might pull off a penalty save. But to do it that early on, it was so early in the game, you're just completely killing the game whatsoever. Just let him go through, let him score, and it's 1-0, 11 v 11. You've got so much more of a chance of winning the game of football. But the other thing was, I don't think he needed to make that foul anyway. I think the ball was actually in Vicario's hands before actually they actually went down on the contact. So, but he definitely has to look at himself there. Obviously, I get its instincts, but you've also got to use your brain a little bit and think, you know what, I can't be leaving my team in trouble here, down to 10 men.
And you mentioned Vicario there. I've got to bring him up. We saw Spurs play Atletico Madrid this past week as we film, where they just had a disaster away at Atletico. Now, you've got Kinski, who obviously we had that problem, where he was substituted off, 2 of the goals were his fault, etc., etc. A lot of Spurs fans have been crying out for him to play anyway because they think that Vicario's not good enough. Yeah. So where do you stand on the whole Spurs goalkeeper debate?
Look, I love Vicario in certain ways because obviously I'm close to his mum and dad. I'm friends with his mum and dad. Okay. So I have kind of soft spot for him. But for me, he's a good shot stopper, but his all-round other game is not good enough for a team in the Premier League, in my opinion. And, and with Kinski, I'm one of these guys that thinks he deserves a run, but deserves a run and a chance, not Atletico Madrid away. It was just completely the wrong game to chuck him in. It was just, you could have given Crystal Palace the week before, or even Forest at the weekend. You don't go to a cauldron like Atletico Madrid and kind of chuck in a goalkeeper that's not played a game in 5 months. It's just absolute suicide, And the main thing that absolutely frustrated me that game, first 3 goals we can see because people couldn't stand up with their boots.
Yeah. They're professional footballers and they're paid that a week and can't put the right boots on.
It's crazy.
Outrageous.
It is crazy.
Absolutely outrageous. So you've got those 2 goalkeepers. You're stuck with them. I mean, obviously there is a third choice, but effectively it's between the top 2. Would you look to drop Vicario again and give Kinski some sort of confidence back, or is that it now for the season he's done?
I think it's too late. I personally think it's too late. I think with the games running out, we can't afford to take a gamble. Kinski, I think the last game he played, I believe, was it Newcastle? There was a game he played, and he made a mistake in that game as well, and we lost to get 2 goals, and we lost it because of him as well. So we kind of forgave him, forget, and then obviously the mistakes he made there, just his confidence must be absolutely shattered, But I will say, Brandon Austin, he came in last year, played a few games, didn't put a foot wrong. Did not put a foot wrong. He's good with the ball at his feet. Again, why has he not been given a chance?
Do you get frustrated with Spurs where they have a lot of talent, Mikey Moore's at Rangers now, for example. I know he's a Spurs fan's favourite. I've seen him play in the Champions League for Spurs, for crying out loud. So you've got Mikey Moore, people like Dane Scarlett. Obviously, when Kane was around, he was given to Millwall, Norwich, Leicester, all that passed it around. Are Spurs a little bit guilty of, they sign these young players, they don't want to throw them in the first team and then just chuck them out in the EFL. Do you think maybe they should be integrated into the squad earlier?
I would love to see it. I would love to see, obviously, the players, if they're good enough, start games. Like we watched the likes of, like you said, mentioned Dane Scarlett. Mikey Moore's very raw. I think this loan will do him the world of good. But we do. We are signing some very good talents, and obviously some of them we are sending out and we're not getting back. We had Josh Keeley, the goalkeeper we sent off, very good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And he could have been here right now competing for that number one spot. But instead he's off now doing his business at another team. Mikey Moore's doing well at Rangers. But like I said, that loan is needed for him. But people like Dane Scarlett and stuff, not just this season, last season, we were so short on numbers last season. We had no firepower last season, and we didn't give him a chance, and it just says everything we need to know. You look around seeing other teams chucking in their young lads, obviously Arsenal chucking in Max Dowman. I'm not saying they're anywhere near the level of him, by the way, but unless you put these players in, you don't know what you're going to get, and give them the run and kind of build them up the way you need to. We don't. I agree with you completely. We kind of bring these youngsters in, chuck them to the side, and we forget about them. And then, we've got so many players that are signed for us that might not even play for us. And the worst one now is like the guy at Hamburg, Vuskovic. There's massive murmurings now that all the big giants are after him this season. He might not even come back to Spurs. That's just wrong. That's just, in so many levels. That's just.
Do you think we're going to talk about the hierarchy, and that could be a whole show in itself. Let's be totally frank about it. But you do wonder what their thoughts are sometimes. Obviously, Heung-min Son, everyone loved him at Spurs. He left, went to MLS, and they signed another South Korean, almost seemingly to keep the revenue, to keep the South Koreans in the stadium. I mean, you go to the stadium, I go to the stadium. It's full of South Koreans taking photographs, everything. So you kind of feel like they're signing people on a revenue basis. Who's making the decisions at Spurs?
That's the question. Yeah, that's the question. We're bringing up people like Johan Lange, and they get fired for their job before because they're not done well enough, not good enough, incompetent in their job, what they're doing. And that's been the story of Spurs' life. We were on the cusp with Pochettino, Champions League final, chasing league titles. That squad was probably 3 or 4 players away from doing what Arsenal have done. We were at where Arsenal were like a year ago. We needed a couple of players, and we would have won something with that squad we had. We had an unbelievable squad, but the board just let us down, and the recruitment has been poor ever since, and it's just got worse and worse, the recruitment. We've missed out on so many players, top players, Eden Hazard, Bruno Fernandes. The list is absolutely endless because we're trying to penny pinch on players, on wages, and we just can't compete because we unfortunately haven't got the owners that want to back us as a football team rather than a business.
This is a strange question, but do you miss Daniel Levy?
I don't miss him, no. What I will say is with Daniel Levy, he was a massive part of the problem along with Enoch. He was. We can't take away from that whatsoever. But what I will say is, if Daniel Levy was still at the club now, Thomas Frank would have been sacked at the West Ham game. He would have been sacked at the West Ham game, and we probably wouldn't be in this mess right now. And for that, it's a little bit like, I told you so. But he still is part of the problem. And until we get both parts out, unfortunately, we're not going to go to where we want to be as a football club.
So you talked there about Thomas Frank. So Ange Postecoglou won Spurs' first trophy in a very long time, the Europa League. Out the door he went. Thomas Frank came in. It was all great when he beat Burnley 3-0 on the first day of the season. Everyone thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. That was the last time I heard a positive kind of murmuring about Thomas Frank. Then he's out the door. Igor Tudor comes in. What was your thoughts when you heard that? Because De Zerbi was mentioned, and obviously he parted company with Marseille the night before, so everyone put 2 and 2 together and made kind of 7 in the end. Who do you, and Harry Redknapp's name is now being bandied about as well, who would you have put in after Frank went?
I said straight away online that I was probably one of the only creators out there that was so against Tudor coming in. I kind of backed it to the hill and said, he's not the right man for us. And I got the old stat thrown at me. Look at his record, Stu. Look what he's done. He's come into this team and done this and done that. And I'm like, you know, but he hasn't done that with a team that's ravished with injuries. And for me personally, like I said, we needed a Harry Redknapp or a Tim Sherwood. And people keep saying, oh, well, Redknapp's 10 years out of date. Tim Sherwood's not managed. Look, it doesn't matter. For me, it does not matter. Like, for me, I want people in the club that care about the club. I think all Spurs needed right now was someone to come in, not so much tactics and formations, just put your arm around the players, try and lift everyone up a little bit. I think that's what was needed. And Tudor hasn't been that person. He hasn't. There's a lot of talk around the club that he's very hard to get on with. A lot of the players don't like him. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen now, there's a lot of reports out yesterday that the players are now saying they're playing for the fans, not for the manager. You know, I don't know if that's because maybe of what we're doing. Maybe now they're trying to see we're backing them, so they're coming out now doing the same. So it's just a case of we've just got to go with it now and see what happens. Obviously, I think that point saves him now as well, by the way. I think he'll get the Forest game.
Well, that was my next question. So everybody was assuming Spurs get beaten 10-0 by Liverpool. It would be an absolute walkover. Obviously, when the team news came out yesterday, Salah was dropped and Ekitike was dropped as well. So they've got their own problems, Liverpool. Spurs come, they get a point. Everyone was expecting the call for 10 o'clock Monday morning. Harry Redknapp announced us and he was on. Tim Sherwood's also, as you mentioned there, done his best to advertise himself on every single show he's on. Yep. So it now looks like, as we film, Tudor is going to take charge against Nottingham Forest. How do you feel about that as a fan?
It's a difficult one because my heart was so set on him going. Obviously, but the point kind of plays with your head a little bit and you think, well, it's just gone to Anfield to get a point. But for me personally, we sat in yesterday and done what we should have done at Anfield. Let's see how it goes at home against Forest on Sunday when a team's going to sit in. Has he got the tactical prowess to break down a low block? You know, and that's what's going to be interesting. For me, I don't think he has. I haven't seen anything attacking-wise that, you know, when we've been on the front foot that has shown me that we can be that team and beat teams comfortably. Yesterday was completely different. You know, we sat back and played on the counter-attack. And we picked our chances, our moments when it was safe to do so. You know, Sunday's a completely different game. We're going to be the home team. We're the ones that have got to try and force it.
Does that count against you, though? Because the stat 11 points in a calendar year in your own stadium, we know about Spurs Stadium, it's brand new, etc., etc. It's probably the best Premier League ground in the country. So does that count against you that it's at home?
It does, but I think we've got to change the fortunes. Obviously, you know, our record at home is absolutely... It's diabolical. It's incredible how bad it is. But we've had a lot of frustrations, though. The fans have hated the football from Thomas Frank. The atmosphere around the ground is absolutely it's negative. We've got fans arguing with each other. You've got the arguments with the board. We've got the protesting. Everything around the club is negative, and it's just having a knock-on effect throughout the whole club. It's making the fans negative. It's making the players negative. And unfortunately, we're just stuck in this rut. You know, hence why we are trying to do something on Sunday to try and change Yeah,
I was going to come on to that. So tell me, I mean, the fan, it gets quite toxic at times, and we saw people leaving. I mean, you know, TNT did a great, you know, overhead shot of the ground emptying out once Palace had scored their third before half time. So what are the fans planning? What is going to happen within the club?
What for the Forest game?
What are they going to protest? Are fans, you know, kind of going to try and get behind the team? What's the feeling around the Spurs fan base at the moment?
There was a protest due. But I basically came up with an idea myself. I went to a few people in my group and said, look, we can't be these negative people around the club. We need to try something different. So I went to a few friends and said, look, is anyone willing to join me? I want to do like a meet the players on Sunday when they arrive on the coach. I want to get us all lined up on the high road, singing positive vibes, no protesting. And a few people have come back and said, yes, we would love to do it. Since then, we've had the people that were going to protest, they've pulled out, they've decided to back the movement as well, which is a great move, so fair play to them. We had a meeting with the club last Thursday with executives, explaining what we would like to do. We're just waiting for the second meeting in the next coming days. Once that's sorted, we're going to hopefully get the green light. We're just having a real positive meet before the game, so when the coach arrives, we're all going to be on the high road, ready for him, just to build the atmosphere, bring back the positive vibes, no negative vibes, and hopefully it can lift everyone before a game. And like I said, it's the biggest game of our season.
So 3 points there, Spurs stay up, do they?
I believe so, yes.
Let's play devil's advocate. No 3 points. let's say they don't even get a point, and it does pain me to say that, but they don't get a point. Tudor goes, and who comes in your opinion?
I think it will be the old Tottenham boys. I think it'll be Harry and Tim. I think that's what will happen. I think they're the ones that will definitely come back. Like you said, you've seen Harry and Tim. They've been plugging themselves,
all over the show
for the last 2 weeks. You know, and like for me, that's what needs to happen. If we do get beat on Sunday, I don't believe we will. Like I believe this positive movement that we're doing, I believe it's going to raise everyone. And if I'm a player and I'm on the team bus coming into Tottenham and I'm seeing thousands of fans line the streets, cheering us on, you know, that's going to make you think, you know what, come on, let's do this. And then we're hoping it drives them on to put a real performance in, an absolute run through brick walls for us fans. You know, we back them to the hill. You know, hard times, difficult times, we still follow them around the country. We still travel abroad to every European game, spend an awful lot of money. And it's just, and we just want to see some heart, some work rate, some fight.